Welcome to episode 166 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing producer Tony Bill. He's had a long, successful career, which includes winning a Best Picture Academy Award for The Sting. We talk about his whole career, which includes his current projects and how he finds screenplays to option and produce. It's a great insight into the thought process of a successful working producer. So stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 166. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter, how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. It really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing producer Tony Bill. Here is the interview. Welcome, Tony, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
Well, I grew up in San Diego. I was not interested in the movie business, wasn't interested in movies particularly, but I went to college and majored in English and art and kind of minored in music, and so I had kind of like the peripheral interests that the movie business, engenders. And when, to make a long story pretty short, right after I got out of college, I acted in college for fun. I came to L.A. to see if I could get a job acting for pay, and that job I got was starring in a movie. And so by 3 months out of college, I was in the movie business.
Okay.
So I got interested in the movie business by being in it.
Okay. And what do you attribute your success? That sounds a lot of actors come pouring into Hollywood and don't have that kind of success. What was the difference? Why were you able to get some of these first acting jobs?
Oh, the same reason every actor gets a job. You're the right person for the part.
I see. And let's talk about then your transition from actor to producer. At what point during your acting career did you decide that you wanted to start produce, and what were the first steps to becoming a producer?
Well, almost immediately I was uncomfortable with being a movie star and being an actor in the movie business. And so I kind of tried my ideas out on different people, and among them was Bud Yorkin and Norman Lear, who wrote and produced and directed my first movie that I was on, was Come Blow Your Horn. And they encouraged me. They said, listen, you're a guy just out of college. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are about the kind of movies we might want to make. And that led to my giving them a book that I thought would make a good movie called The Graduate, and giving Liza Minnelli a book I thought would make a good movie called The Sterile Cuckoo, and Francis Coppola, who's a friend of mine, young, struggling director, I gave him the book You're a Big Boy Now, which became his first movie. So I saw that my instincts might be worth pursuing myself, not just giving to other people.
Mm-hmm. And were you just reading a ton of books and just reading scripts, reading books? How did you even come in contact with some of this material?
Well, as an English major, I was interested in reading, and as a reader, I was interested in books, and as a book reader, I was interested in new books, and so those were all first novels. And I also became interested in the screenplay itself as a form. because I'm interested in kind of freshness, and so as it turned out, the movies that I've made have almost all been from original screenplays and almost all from first-time writers. So I'm interested in the new, and I'm interested in the fresh, and in the original, in the broad sense of the word. So I'm interested in stuff that I haven't seen before, not stuff that follows in the footsteps of other movies.
Sure. So let's talk about some of these first producing credits. And maybe you can just kind of tell us a little bit about how you came in contact with that script. On IMDb, Deadhead Miles, written by Terrence Malick, is one of your first credits. How did you get involved with that project, and how did you find the script, and what was it about that script that, just exactly what you said, you're interested in stuff that's fresh and original?
Yeah. Well, I didn't find the script. I commissioned it. I had met Terry when he was a student at the American Film Institute, and we hit it off. So we became friends, good friends. And I had another friend, a sailing friend of mine that I sailed a lot with, who became head of Warner Brothers, John Calley. And so one day I said to John, and John said, listen, come over to Warner Brothers and develop some material for us, because he knew me through sailing mainly and through working for him as an actor on a movie. He kind of knew what my thoughts were and what my tastes were, and he responded to them and said, come on over here and see what you want to do. And I said, well, one of the things I want to do is I want to develop a movie about the world of big rig truck driving, the whole world of country western music, truck driving, the men who spend their lives on the road in trucks. And so I have this friend named Terry Malick who I think could write it. He's never written a screenplay, but I think he could do it. And so John said, okay, well, let's hire him to do it. So Warner's paid a small fee, Writers Guild minimum, to hire Terry. And I hired Terry to do his first script. And that became Deadhead Miles.
Okay. And just where did you get the original idea for that? How were you even exposed to those ideas?
It was me. Well, the idea was my own taste. I was interested in the world of country and western music. I was interested in the kind of subgenre of music that is about life on the road, and so on. So, and I thought it might be an interesting, untested world to look into. No one ever made a movie about it before, to my knowledge, and so again, it was fresh. It was something that I thought would be good.
So let's
or interesting.
So let's talk about Steelyard Blues. Maybe you can give us the same sort of summary about how that one came into existence.
Well, again, an agent sent me a script of a young college graduate, a guy just out of college at UCLA, named David Ward, and I read the script, and it was Deadhead. It was a Steelyard Blues, and I thought it was really fresh and interesting and unusual and original, and it was not like some other movie I had seen or heard of. So, but I also thought it was a very, very difficult movie to get made because of that, because it was so different. And so I met with him and we started talking. I said, well, this is like really a tough movie to get made, I think. Do you have something you want to do next? What are you working on now? And in about maybe 4 or 5 minutes, he told me this thought about, I want to do this movie set in the 30s in the world of con men, and I want about a guy whose best friend gets killed by another con man, and he decides to go after the guy and con him out of every dollar he's got. That was basically it. And I said, I love that idea. Let's develop it. And so I set about to find somebody to help me finance the script, because I didn't have any money to speak of, and also to be, to produce it with me, to be a partner. And so I had met Julia Phillips, who worked as kind of a reader for a company, and her husband Michael, who I just loved. And I said, hey, why don't we do this? And so the three of us developed, put up the money to hire David Ward to write this script. It wasn't called The Sting. It was just called it wasn't called anything. And at the same time, we optioned Steelyard Blues to see if maybe we could get it made. So it turns out that we got both of them made.
Okay. And I'm curious because one of the big things, especially in today's market, you always hear producers saying period pieces are a really tough sell. That didn't concern you back then? I mean, you just said to David Ward, Steelyard Blues was a difficult movie, and the fact that The Sting is a period piece, that wasn't a problem?
Well, every movie's a problem. You know, there isn't a movie made, I don't think, that hasn't been turned down by somebody along the way, and certainly The Sting, the Steelyard Blues was turned down, and the Sting was turned down by several people before we got it made. So the degree of difficulty is different on every movie. Mm-hmm. Is a period movie difficult to get made these days, or was it then? I don't think it was as difficult to make a period movie then probably as it is now, but it was not as enormously expensive, relatively speaking, probably.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about just that development process, and I think The Sting is a good example. And maybe you can even kind of talk about even today and the years after The Sting. What does that development process look like for you? I mean, you're bringing him in very early where all he has is kind of a pitch. Are you reading drafts and giving notes? And how many drafts along the way does something like The Sting go through?
Sting went through 2 drafts, one of which we never saw because David Ward wrote a draft of it in about a year or so, and took him a year to do it, and he didn't like it, so he started over again without even telling us. So, and he called in the middle of it all and said, "Hey, I got an offer to do another writing job. Will you guys let me do it?" And we said, "Sure, yeah, go off and do it. We're in no hurry." So that took quite a while. There was basically 2 drafts, whatever the one that David wrote and threw away, and the one that he finished and was in almost every detail the script that we shot. We didn't screw around with it. Nobody did.
Yeah, and is that unusual for you, or do you kind of let your writers, you try and produce what your writers write?
My experience, almost without exception, is that when somebody writes a script, that's the person who wrote it. That's the end of the story for me. I don't hire rewriters. Okay. If you've written a script, as far as I'm concerned, that's your script, and that's the one I'm going to try to get made. And by the way, if you don't want to do any further work on it, then that's fine, and it probably won't get made if there's a reason that it needs work. Mm-hmm. But I don't go out and hire other writers. I'm neither interested nor talented enough to figure out who can do a better job on the script than the original writer.
Yeah. So let's talk about cold email query letters. We started emailing a few years ago when I sent you a cold email letter. You're gracious enough to read my script and actually write back, which I will tell you is very unusual. Usually you never hear anything back one way or another. I'm curious, how many query letters do you get in a given month, like the one that I sent a few years ago?
I don't know, several a day. So what does that make? 60 maybe? Okay. 60 to 100 maybe pitches, queries of sorts. Now, they aren't letters like you sent, which is usual, but they're, emails or some other form of like finding their way. They're very unimaginative too, by the way. People are so incredibly unimaginative when it comes to sending out letters or scripts. It's very unusual that I get one that I respond to.
And do you have any just rough ballpark, like what is the difference in how many would you say you're getting, let's say 60 to 90 a month? How many of those do you actually request the script?
Oh, that's a good, I don't know, maybe 10%. I'd be happy if it was 10%. It probably isn't. I mean, if I was interested enough to ask for a script, that's a good sign.
Yeah. So, can you just mentioned that some of the query letters are very unimaginative. Do you have a couple of examples over the years of people that sent very imaginative query letters, ones that really stood out and that you really liked, just to give some tips to the people listening to this?
Well, when you say a query letter, I'm taking that as meaning usually an email that says, "Dear Sir, I'm a writer and I've just written a great script and I think you'd like to read it," kind of letter. The mistakes are much more common than the standouts, and the common turnoff for me is a writer who writes a letter saying, "I've just written this great script." First of all, by the way, I don't like people bragging about how good their scripts are, and I'll decide for myself. But there's many things that come to mind. Telling me how much other people have liked it. Like, well, if other people loved it, why didn't they do something with it, I say. Telling me how much like another movie it is, or like in some other combination of movies, The Godfather meets Love Story. I mean, come on. If that's your idea of what you've written, then I'm not interested in it, because it means it's common. It's I've seen it before. Misspellings, poor English, poor grammar within the letter, very common. I mean, I in however many 50 years or so of reading scripts and letters that introduce them, I only remember one instance of a poorly spelled kind of not amateurish, but a poorly spelled and badly punctuated letter that introduced a very interesting script. And it was by somebody who had never written a script before, and there was something about her letter that charmed me and got my interest enough to overcome the fact that she didn't know how to write. If you demonstrate in your letter that you don't know how to write, or that it's a letter just like everybody else's letter, your script is going to reflect that, and I'd bet on that. And I've never had a contradictory experience. So, I'm just not interested. And I dare say most people aren't. But there are people you can sell a script to who want to do something just like the most recent hit, and send it to them, but don't send it to me.
Yeah. So I'm curious, just in general, so you're getting a lot of, 2-3 query letters a day. How else do scripts get to you? As a director, do you have an agent and your agent submits scripts to you? Or what are some of the ways that you come in contact with scripts, aside from like the query letters that we just talked about? Through
I wish I could think of a good analogy. Through sort of like the almost the way birds of prey find their food. They cruise around at altitude until they see something moving that looks interesting. So I have many of the movies that I've done have come not through agents. Matter of fact, I can't even remember many that come through agents or come through a query letter. They come through meeting somebody in a bar, through somebody saying, "Hey, I have a friend who just wrote a script. Do you want to read it?" Through any number of unexpected encounters. But if you're attuned to those unexpected encounters, if you're looking for the unexpected, you'll find it, and which is the case with me. I'm looking for the unexpected submission. I'm looking for this person who isn't doing what everybody else is doing, and P.S. isn't writing what everybody else is writing. I'm looking for the person who has an imagination when it comes to submitting. So I'll give you an example that I wrote about. I don't know if you know my book, Movie Speak, but somebody sent me once a armed guard with a script in a briefcase that was chained to his wrist, and wouldn't release it until I gave him my ID. Now that really gets your attention. That's not just somebody sending you a "Dear Sir" or "Dear Tony" or "Dear Producer" letter. It's not somebody just doing an unimaginative way of presenting a script to you. It's somebody who clearly thought about and thought enough of their script that they found a way to get it to somebody they didn't know. And there are many ways to do that, depending on your imagination. So that stands out in my mind. To answer your question, is the most imaginative presentation that I've got. But there are many.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, you keep going back to this idea that you want fresh and original scripts that are not like other things. And is this just, is it a conscious decision at some point you made just because you feel like ultimately that is what is going to be, fits in the marketplace the best? Is it just a personal preference? You say, you know what, I'm not going to take the money and, take the easy projects that could make a lot of money, but I'm not interested in working on them. Where does this sort of come from? Is it a business decision? You think ultimately fresh and original will win the day with the awards, with the business? Where does that come from?
Oh, it's strictly personal taste. It's not smart from a business point of view. Because it's so difficult to get an original script made. Mm-hmm. And when I say original, I'm talking a script that is not derived from some popular novel or popular play, mm-hmm. As well as original in its concept. Listen, if I invited you to come see the movie with me tonight, would you like to go see a movie that is very much like some movie you've seen before, or would you like to see the most original movie out there?
Yeah, I'm probably with you. Most original, freshest,
unique. I'm with me too, and that's my criterion. I'm not a rug merchant who says, "Oh, you don't like this one? Hey, how about that one?" I'm just interested in, and I wouldn't be any good at pursuing or hanging in there for the amount of time it takes to get something made, or presenting it to a director or a studio or star and saying, please read this. I love this script. This is so special. It's not like something else out there. It's original. It's fresh. How could you say that about something that follows in the footsteps of, 16 other movies that made money or got a lot of notice? Mm-hmm. So it's just the way I work. It's not a calculated decision.
Yeah. So let's talk about what happens. Someone gets you a script, you read it, you like it, you think you can do something with it. Just give us sort of a ballpark, overview of kind of what happens to that script. Do you option it, and what does an option agreement look like with somebody like yourself? And then what does that development process realistically look like? A lot of rewrites. How many years does it take to get that movie produced, and all that sort of stuff? I think writers would find interesting.
Well, first of all, I show it to my partner, Helen Bartlett, who I've worked with for the last 25 or 30 years. So mm-hmm. we decide whether we both like it, because it kind of doesn't make sense to pursue something only one of us likes. But given that, we make a deal with the writer. We're going to give you some money for an option for a year and a half, and we're going to try to get it made during that period. Kind of simple as that, mm-hmm. although maybe your question was more complex.
Yeah, no, I think that gives an overview. I was curious about what, like, the terms writers are always asking, well, how long should I option the script? And I think you just said 12 months to 18 months is kind of pretty standard, and I think that's interesting to just hear. That's kind of minimum what you need in terms of trying to get a movie made, and also in terms of trying to exhaust all possibilities. Mm-hmm. And would you say, just a ballpark figure, but roughly speaking, how many scripts do you option in a given year versus how many scripts actually get produced?
Oh, well, you can't get a movie a year made. You probably can't get a movie every 2 years made. So let's say, with luck, you get a movie every 3 or 4 years made. Mm-hmm. If you're me. Or us. And in one case, it was a script that became a series called Pitch that we just did last year, derived from a script that we've had for 10 years. For 10 years, I tried to get that made as a feature film and never could get it made, and finally, after 10 years of trying, got it made as a series. So that's one example. There's no normal. Sometimes it takes 10 years, sometimes it takes 5. Sometimes it happens, maybe within a year. That'd be unlikely.
Yeah.
But
with something like Pitch, where you have it for 10 years, are you continuously re-upping the option, or does it come in and out of options and you kind of have it on the back burner?
That one I never gave up on. There are others that we've kind of gone in and out of option with.
Okay. And let's just run through a couple of specifics of some of your recent projects. Again, I'd just be curious to hear specifically how this project got to you. And let's start with Pitch. How did you originally come in contact with that script?
A friend of a friend.
Okay.
I met a young guy 10 years ago who, I don't know, he was a friend of a screenwriter friend of mine. He was this kind of struggling screenwriter, and I said, well, let me read what you've written. And he sent me that script, and I just loved it. So that was just a chance encounter, like one I've talked about before.
How about like Pictures of Alice Woods? That's a film you directed. How did you get involved with that project and that script?
That was unusual, although I've taken over a couple of movies. That was unusual. Sissy Spacek, who's an actress that we've worked with, called me and said, I'm starring in a movie for television. We're having a lot of trouble. We need a director overnight, like tomorrow. And can you come take over this movie? It starts shooting in 5 days. That is a yes or no question. So I said, okay, let's go for it. And so
you had never read the script.
Showed up.
You had never heard, literally never even heard of this project until she called.
Exactly.
Huh.
And so I decided to go for it, and showed up. And the script needed a rewrite, so we worked on the script for about 3 days, and then we took an extra day or two to prep, and we started shooting. And it actually turned out wonderfully, and which is it's not credit to me. It shows you how little you need to worry about on certain movies. You don't need to worry about the locations or the extras or the schedule as much as you do worry about. There are times where it's very liberating not to worry about too much. So when you don't have time to worry about things, you don't. So in that case, I said, I'm not even interested in looking at the locations. Just tell me where we're going to shoot, and we'll make the best of them.
And what about Flyboys? That's another film you directed. How did you get involved with that one?
That grew out of a friendship with Dean Devlin, who was the producer, who knew that I was a lifelong pilot and knew that I was passionate about the subject of flying, especially older airplanes, which I fly. And he came across that script, and he called me up and he said, I've just read a script that I think you were born to direct. I read it overnight, called him back, and I said, let's go to work. He said, well, it's going to take me a while to get the money for it. I said, I'll wait. So I turned down all other jobs for years, several years, while he raised the money for it. And that's how that was born.
Yeah. And what about Fitzgerald? That's a film you executive produced. Maybe you can give us kind of a same sort of summary on that.
Helen and I, my partner Helen Bartlett and I, had a friend who was a very, very successful television writer, and he came to us and he said, I've written a script that I want to direct as my first job, and I'd like you guys to produce it. So that's how that happened.
Okay. And how about In the Time of the Butterflies? Where did that project come from?
That was Helen's baby. She read a book and called In the Time of the Butterflies, optioned it, developed a screenplay, and it took years and years to get it made. Again, wanting to make it as a feature, but not being able to get it made as a feature. It's a very difficult material, very limited, very different, very fresh, about a dictator in Central America, and the three women who, in effect, tried to and finally did overthrow him, and finally got it made as a movie for television.
Okay. And I know you keep coming back to this sort of idea of fresh and original. Is there anything else that you're looking for? And I think in some of the email correspondence we've had, you've said you're specifically not looking for like the typical genre fare. Do you not care about genre at all? It's just purely if it's fresh and original? But are there any other criteria that you might sort of add on to fresh and original?
Good question. I don't know. It's beginning to look that way. It's beginning to look like I don't. When I look back on it, I mean, I've never made a genre movie. I've never made like a horror movie or a western or a thriller or the movies that I've been attracted to or the scripts I've been attracted to have all been kind of sui generis. One of a kind. They don't fall into a category. I would say, maybe I'm not remembering all of them well enough, but they have their own kind of charm. It's like, I don't know, is it a personality? They have a personality because when you meet somebody, now and then you meet somebody, you say, I just met somebody that's like, not like anybody I've ever met before. They're like different. They have different tastes. They have different looks. They have different whatever. And you say, this is such an interesting person. Well, that's what I'm looking for in a script. Mm-hmm. It's a turnoff if it's a western or if it's a comedy or if it's a sci-fi. If you can categorize it, I'm probably not the guy to send it to. Mm-hmm. And I say me, I'm talking about for both Helen and me. We are not in that business of copying, following in the footsteps of, or cashing in on previous successes of other people's, mm-hmm. much less our own. So it would be very, very rare, it's starting to look like after all this time, for me or us to respond to something you could pigeonhole, mm-hmm. Which is why we have such difficulty getting a movie made, because, and why anybody who does set out to make a movie that's fresh and original has a hard time of it. It's not the easy route. Mm-hmm. And it's not the easy route in any world, whether it's, music or, design or any number of enterprises that people undertake. Being fresh and original is hard. It's hard to be that, and it's hard to market that, and it's hard to attract an audience for that. And, ask Steve Jobs.
Exactly. And is it a producing taste or is it a viewer taste too? I mean, do you not go and watch these movies? Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is coming out. I'm excited to see it. Are those types of movies you don't enjoy watching them either? Forget about the business and the producing side.
I probably wouldn't go to anything that had 2 after it.
Okay. You haven't seen the recent Star Wars movies?
I saw the Star Wars that came out a year ago.
Yeah, Force Awakens. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. So,
because friends of mine made it. To tell you the truth, I like them so much, and I was invited to see it. Would I have gone to see it without having that personal stake and that personal affection for J.J. Abrams, and Kathleen Kennedy? I don't know. I probably wouldn't have gotten around. I don't want to be misunderstood and say I would have refused to see it or not seen it or put it down. But knowing my habits, I wouldn't have been there for that. No.
Yeah. So just any general parting advice for screenwriters? We've certainly touched on fresh and original. Do you have anything else that you might just want to tell screenwriters that are looking to break in?
I think the biggest mistake screenwriters make is thinking they can be screenwriters. There is a gold rush afoot of writers who think that they can do it. It's like thinking you can play the piano. You can't. You have to practice. You have to learn. You have to practice. You have to be familiar with other music. You have to be, trained. There's a lot of things. And writing screenplays seems so easy. And when have you heard anybody say, I think I'm going to write a novel? I mean, no one says that. They think it's hard. Mm-hmm. Everybody thinks they can write a screenplay. And in terms of numbers of people that are trying to do it that I've been aware of, since I'm in the kind of, so to speak, business of looking for new writers, they're wrong. It's not easy. Mm-hmm. It's a very, very demanding and difficult form, much more so than the novel, much more so than the short story, much more so than any other form of fictional endeavor. Everybody thinks they can write a poem. They're wrong. Mm-hmm. Not a good one. And everybody thinks they can write a script, and they're wrong. And the world is just unbelievably filled with bad screenplays.
Yeah, no doubt. So, well, Tony, I really appreciate your coming on the show. I appreciate you reading a few of my scripts over the years, and I just really enjoyed talking to you today. So thank you very much for coming on and sharing your insight.
Well, I hope it's helpful, not too negative. But
very much. So I appreciate it.
Okay,
all right.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye.
You bet. Bye-bye.
I just want to mention two things I'm doing at Selling Your Screenplay to help screenwriters find producers who are looking for material. First, I've created a monthly newsletter that will be sent directly to producers. Every member of SYS Select can submit one logline per newsletter. I went and emailed my large database of producers and asked them if they would like to receive this monthly newsletter of pitches. So far, I have well over 350 producers who have signed up to receive it. These producers are hungry for material and happy to read scripts from new writers. So if you want to participate in this pitch newsletter and get your script into the hands of lots of producers, sign up at sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Secondly, I've partnered with one of the paid premier screenwriting leads sites so I can syndicate their leads to SYS Select members. There are lots of great paid leads coming in each week from our partner. Recently, I've been getting between 5 and 12 high-quality paid leads per week. These are producers and production companies who are actively looking to buy material or are looking to hire a screenwriter for a specific project. If you sign up for SYS Select, you'll get these leads emailed directly to you several times per week. These leads run the gamut from producers and production companies looking for a specific type of spec script, to producers looking to hire a screenwriter to write up one of their ideas, to producers looking for shorts, features, TV, and web series pilots. It's a huge array of different types of projects that these producers are looking for, so no matter what type of scripts you write, hopefully you'll be able to find some matches. And these leads are exclusive to our partner and to SYS Select members. Once again, to sign up, go to sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing another producer named Dallas Sonier. Many of the filmmakers that I've talked to on this podcast have worked with Dallas. He produced films like Bone Tomahawk, Dark Was the Night, Some Kind of Hate, and many others. As I was doing the interviews with these filmmakers, his name kept coming up, so I thought it would be interesting to talk to him and try and figure out why he was producing the sorts of films that he was producing. This is invaluable information for screenwriters. Both Dallas and Tony, who I interviewed today, are established, successful producers who are open to working with new screenwriters. So these guys are exactly the sorts of producers that should be on your radar, and you should be looking for ways to learn more about them and potentially network with them. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. That's the show. Thank you for listening.